Okay. Ugh. Made it. Made it.
Well, our apologies for the late start. Mike needed to take a few personal minutes, and I caught up on some light reading. So I was dusting off. You know what's funny is I was just these old sport compact cars are basically like kind of bibles to me these days. Right? Like they're just
Well,
pardon
they are.
the term, but I mean they're like
Yeah.
tuner bibles. Like if you really kind of look at it, using the term very loosely, of course, but it
Yeah.
has like really good stuff that was happening at the time. So like back in 2002, pre 350Z release,
Okay.
obviously the big production for that vehicle was the Run. Do you remember the Run? Is they called it the Run, the Sunset Le Mans
Yes, that
350Z?
that was a promotion by Nissan, a very well thought out production of
Yeah.
right, a 350Z.
You
Yes,
know where they
yes.
shot that?
Was
In
it
Prague.
Paris?
Prague.
Prague. Okay, I had a
They shot
P.
it in
I was
Prague
close.
over like a 3-day period, but they planned it out, and it's crazy because it talks about all the back footage about how the chase cars were actually other Z's. All of them were
Oh.
paint Sunset Le Mans in case they put them into walls. So, um, and so they had like
Really?
police cars kind of following them, and it's just the amount of um, extravagance to get that whole thing done back in those days was like insane. Like the amount of money that they put into the production and to get it done. And they had a director, the same guy who filmed The Abyss, that movie from Oscar-winning movie. He's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
guy who he filmed that little excerpt as well. So it's like it's nuts how
Wow.
much money that they shot that they put into that to get that piece done at that time. So
Well,
yeah.
how well thought out it was, right? The
Hmm.
investment on this thing.
Yeah.
And it was, and you got to think about it at the time that it was 2002, 2003.
Hmm.
This wasn't like it went straight to social media. Social media wasn't a thing. So to go
Nah.
to that much investment into a disc,
A disc, and they
that
sold the
you just
discs,
who
yeah, for
knows.
9.95 at the time.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Was it like at dealerships? I guess.
dealerships,
I'm
and you could
guessing.
buy it online, and then they gave a substantial amount away for free to the Z clubs because that's how I got mine. I actually got a pack of like four, and then I at
Yeah.
the time I was writing for miscellaneous, so I got it in a press release with Nissan too as well because I went under two names, so I got two more of those. So it's like I have like
you,
five of those. Yeah.
identity theft is not a or
I
it,
write under
identity
my
theft is
name
pretty
and my
serious, Miles. I'm just
pseudonym. I write under a pseudonym, Jiggles McNasty, and then I write under my name, which is Miles Hall. Yeah, it's kind of funny. So crazy stuff,
that's
but
that's awesome.
yeah, I digress. So, yeah, man, I was just doing some reading and kind of talking about that, and
Yeah,
it was funny. I was going to share a story with you.
yeah.
That I was, my little girl was like talking to me, and she was just like, "Daddy, Daddy," and I'm like doing one of these like lost in space kind of things, and she's
Okay.
like, and she asked me daddy so many times that she walked up to my wife and she goes, "Is daddy okay?" And then I was like, I snapped, like I came back out of it. And my
Yeah.
wife's like, "Are you okay?" Like she thought like maybe I'm having some kind of like a seizure moment, or you know uh, an
Y-
early onset of whatever's going to ail me.
Dementia. Yeah.
There you go, right? So I'm thinking
Yeah.
that. And she's like, "What? You were like totally lost in a moment." And I'm like, I was thinking about like a car problem, and I was wondering
Of
like,
course.
and it was like, I'm thinking like, it has fuel, it has
Yeah.
spark. The timing was good when I got it. And I'm like, in my head, I'm going through issues.
Why won't it turn over? Right.
And I'm like, here I am, like lost in it, like, like like a mental patient on too many drugs. Like, and the reality is, I'm just trying to figure out something in my head. I'm literally dissecting the entire engine of my. But so don't fear if you see somebody on
Ah,
the street and it looks like there's a mental illness and they're a car guy. They're probably just trying to do some
get their
diagnostic. Yeah,
well, that's why they're on the street because their car's on jack stands, and yeah, it
uh,
just it solves everything. Yeah, yeah, you're just
it all makes sense.
yeah,
Well, then
yeah.
thank you again for everybody coming on with us a little bit late. Again, we're going to get started here in just a few moments, but we're going to talk to you a little bit about this episode of the Nissan Nerd Podcast. So today we are going to talk about a few things. We'll give you the latest update regarding an expedition team who's driving their all-new Nissan Araya from the north to the South Pole. Also,
Mhm.
we're going to dig up some Nissan Nerd archives and share a very unique way that Nissan tries to break their own stuff back in the day. And then on this episode of the Back Alley Chat, we're going to talk about nuts. Lug lug nuts, that is, surprisingly. We're going to talk a little bit about how to service your lug nuts, the importance of lug nuts, and safety on
Safety.
this episode of the Nissan Nerd Podcast. Stay with us.
Let's do it, guys. All right, man. Good intro. Good intro, man. Yeah, it's
Oh, thank you. Pat myself on the
yeah.
back for that one. But Mike, it's been a minute since we've done like a full episode like this with news, and I mean, I don't know. It just feels like how long has it been? Like I feel like we've been doing interviews, and then we were at Super Lap Battle, and it just like the first of the year just
Tease.
kind of got away from us.
You're absolutely right, man. I was actually looking back at our past episodes. The last time that we've actually had what you might call a traditional show where we do the motorsports, we do the Nissan news update. It's been January, dude. Since January. Here we are in late April. So easily, let's just call it 3.5, essentially 4 months since we've really had a just a simple episode where we actually get back into just the latest things happening in the world of Nissan in
We
Infinity
just
and
had
Datsun.
like I don't know, it's crazy. It's just we got so busy with Super Lap Battle, then doing interviews, and we'll be
Well,
getting back to interviews here pretty soon. But
yeah.
yeah, we're gonna
Well,
try to
it,
nice healthy balance.
and it's
Um,
car show season. That's the reason why. I mean,
yeah,
everything. The weather's. I mean, it's
it's
getting
true.
better and better. Events are happening or have already happened. So yeah, it's just a real uh, challenge to get the timing right and to be able to do everything. Our shows get long enough. It's as much as to do it all on top. It really is more of an endurance challenge, right?
Yeah, very much so. So we got a few people on with us. Amon finally back with us again. We don't get enough of the Amonster. He said the thumbnail for tonight's episode is just nut busting funny. Well, yes,
There you go.
we
Yeah,
do
that's
need
right. He's
that.
referring to the Mad Max. So of course, Miles, with most episodes, you always do the honors and trying to find us some sort of
Oh yeah.
parody to put our faces on with Photoshop and whatnot. This last one was through a Mad Max uh, uh, screenshot, and that
Oh
was
man,
awesome.
one
Yeah.
of these days I'll have a chance to tell you. And I think I shared
Oh,
the story with you one time, a story about Mad Max. It's not necessarily about Mad Max, but it's
yeah.
about the guy with the mohawk who's in the second Mad
The second
Max.
one.
He's a
Yeah.
famous actor who actually came to San Antonio one day. If you guys remind me, I'll tell you a really great story about him doing like an anniversary cinematic preview when he came to here in Texas. The Draft House hosted it, and they ran a really crazy rally. And this gentleman showed up to be the keynote speaker, if you will, before the
Yeah.
movie release. And they sold out the theater, and then they did this crazy rally, but things got insane. And one of these days, I'll kind of talk to you about it,
Ooh.
and maybe we'll talk about
Okay.
it on the next episode. And I'll
You
I'll
got
do some
that.
funny photoshops. But
I like the teaser. I
that
like the
was
teaser.
insane. So anyway, but moving right along, catching up. I mean, Mike, what have you been up to as of late?
Man, I tell you, so since we last spoke about this, last episode, honestly, I've just been buying supplies, buying parts. The good old fun thing of just buying car parts, right? That's the fun part, is more of the fun part. So, last episode we were buying paint, color match paint, primer, supplies. This last 2 weeks has been engine parts. So we're looking at
Okay.
fuel injectors, oil pump. Of course, what I'm referring to is that I've got this. 300ZX and a VG30 engine, essentially that I'm refreshing, and part of that is just taking the block essentially down to the short block. I'm actually putting on some fresh head gaskets. You had done something recently, and I was like, you know what, you kind of motivated me to do the same thing. Let's put some fresh head gaskets on this engine. So honestly, man, these last 2 weeks have been nothing but just buying parts. Um, just grabbing a crowbar and opening up my wallet and just making it happen. Buy once, cry once. Just get it done. But yeah, I'm getting ready for that. Honestly, it's going to be garage time soon. These boxes or shipments should be coming in as early as I think Monday. So it's going to be go time really really soon here for me and the 300 ZX. Um, by the way, speaking of buying stuff, you shared with me a purchase. I don't even know. You surprise again. I've said this before. You always surprise me with the number of purchases, this sporadic, and these aren't like nickel and dime purchases. You bought another Z, another a Datsun Z this time,
Whoa,
right?
whoa, whoa! You're sounding like my wife here, and I don't really appreciate that. But no, actually, I have been doing a little bit of, since all my projects are kind of away from me right now, I've had some free time while I have downtime working on my own projects. So I have a little bit of free time. So I've been taking on other people's projects, or I've been getting phone calls for people to say, "Hey, I've got a car, and I kind of want to restore it to a degree or get it back on the road at least. Would you
Yeah.
be interested in purchase it and finding it a new home?" And one of my newest projects was was a bit of a rough situation.
Okay.
Let me see here. I'll share it with you here. But it's been a
Oh,
project, Z32's. I guess if you want to call it a survivor, but it's basically a project that was pretty rough normally. So I end up nicknaming it Project Ziphilus.
yes.
The
Yes.
reason
Great.
being,
Great name.
it was it was pretty bad. Like, it was to the point that the car was so full of rodent poop and other things that it was probably going to give you syphilis in some capacity or some other type of disease. This vehicle is pretty rough. It actually had squirrels, rats, creatures living into it. So I ended up taking this vehicle back to my house, stripping it down, getting all the hazmat piece of it done, and slowly kind of getting it backed up to what it needed to be. Um, so yeah, it had been kind of sitting for a number of years. So this thing wouldn't start. I ended up kind of going through everything, slowly cleaning it out, and really using a nice chemical process to take all the unsavory things out of it. And I just kind of brought it back to life. I started
Great.
getting it idling,
Yeah.
and I couldn't get it over like 800 RPM
Yeah.
on idle. I'm like, what the hell is it? So I start running through everything, and I'm like, it can't be that bad. So I ended up taking the whole engine apart. No, excuse me, the whole nose piece, kind of starting to take it apart. It
Front end.
ends
Yeah.
up turning out that there was a family of mice that were living where the air filter had been, and I'll kind of show you here. Oh man, there you
They're.
go.
Oh.
Yeah, they were all
Uh,
living inside there, and it turned out that the MAF was actually completely clogged. Pulled it out away. I could easily rev this thing up after that. Going a little bit further, changed out fuel filter, spark plugs. It's not pretty, but it's enough to kind of get it going. And from there, I kind of would just put on new rubber, check the brakes, made it a nice, safe vehicle for the next owner. And it actually, I was contacted by an individual just the last few days, and he's going to take it home. So he's actually going to be the new owner of this beauty.
you
So mhm,
Yeah, you actually surprised me by how fast you flipped this car. There was a
yeah,
conversation that we had
about
not
three
too long
weeks.
ago.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Oh, maybe I'll drive it for a year," and I was like, "Oh, that'd be kind of cool. We can, have some fun with it." And then boom, seller comes in. I'm like, or a buyer comes in, and
And
okay,
I don't sell these cars for a substantial amount of money. I mean, yeah, I could have picked it up, but the beautiful thing it was all straight and ready to go, and
oh,
the
that's
engine
true.
was running strong, good compression numbers all the way across. It's an automatic, and I was like, you know what, I could keep it, and then you have to do the realistic math of like, okay, how
Yes.
much time is going to take, how much effort is it worth do I need a fourth Z32? I was like, so,
Yes.
and I
Don't you
get
know
them
the
all the
ant? No.
time, but I was
Mm.
just like, maybe it's time to let this one go. So I found a local Z guy who's really interested, super excited. So I was like, you know what? It's going to a nice home. He wants to keep it conventional. I was like, you know what? It's yours. So I came up with a price, and he's going to be taking it home pretty soon. So
That's
winner,
good.
winner for him. So kudos to that gentleman, Mr. George Dominguez, who reached out to me. It'll soon be his. So,
All right. All
but
right.
he takes ownership on Saturday. So, but yeah, and I purchased another Z
Yeah, yeah.
apparently.
So you took the money from that and brought invested into another Z. This was the Datsun I was thinking you were talking
Yeah, I
about.
picked up a '77 Datsun 280Z. I have no idea what I bought, but it's going to
Now
be
the
a box of problems. So we'll see if it's going to be a parts car or if it's going to be a survivor and saver. So we'll go from there.
is it in? So question: is it in Texas? Is it not
It,
in
it is in
Texas?
Texas. Yeah,
It
I
is
can't
okay.
make
The
Texas is big enough to where I can't make my travels outside of
Well,
Texas. But
well, the reason why I
so
ask is because I remember not too long ago, me and you took a drive up to Colorado Springs to pick up a Datsun, that
yeah,
620, about 2 years back, and I was on a whim of a trip. Had a great time, but out of state. So I was just wondering. I know there are no limits to what you will do
it depends on
for a
the car. It
Datsun.
depends on the
Yeah.
car if it's worth the save. So we'll see how it goes. So but yeah, for right now, that's what I'm doing, and I'm just having a good time in between my eventual move officially to New Mexico. I'm just trying to spread some karma, spread some good vibes, fix up cars while I'm in town, and just I'm just making sure I'm keeping my tools in my head sharp. So we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, that's where I've been up to. That's pretty much it. I did want to do a little acknowledgement again. Amon's on with us. Haley is actually on with us from Myers Motorsports. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Anybody else
Thank you.
want to drop in? Feel free to comment in the notes as we continue on with the show tonight. We are streaming the show live through YouTube. Anything that you'd like, again, to comment about the show, write in the section comments. We'll do our best to try to answer those. We'll share some of your comments throughout the show. And
Yes.
let's get started with the show officially. But, Mike, I'm going to
Yes.
give you this handoff here tonight.
I'm gonna go try to redeem myself from the last episode. I had a brain fart. So again, officially, let's go ahead and give out a salute for those who are with us. Grab a drink, grab whatever you have, and let's go ahead and do a salute. We say that uh, for those in the Nissan family whom we wish good health, and for those we may have lost along the way, let us be reminded of them often. Guys with us, ganpai. Woo.
Bye.
Mm.
Ooh. So,
Mm. Let me go ahead and say this, Miles, before we continue.
mm,
There was two call outs, two shout outs we thought it would be good to go ahead and do as well as part of our kanpai. First is saying happy birthday to our buddy Mr. Ayan Dasgupta. Of course, you would say that he is you might call him the third man of the Nissan Nerd podcast. We've got here with us, let's see if this works out here. There he is. All right, all right. So again, with Ion, again, very much a huge resource to the show. Again, an IT specialist for us, essentially a fact checker. He's just as much a nerd that we rely on as part of the show. We've got a few pictures, of course. This was last picture here was we were in actually we were in New Mexico at that time.
mhm.
Of course, Miles with your face app Photoshop. You got him.
Yeah.
This was actually in
Um,
Atlanta. He fell asleep, or no, he thinks he's asleep, and we threw a few magazines his way, just being funny with him. This one, Miles, did you take this picture? I don't know how the camera angle
I
on
don't
that one.
recall this, but it was beautiful. All I know is whoever did it did some excellent work.
Yeah, that
There's
was
Ion in his zone.
he.
So
That's the look in this guy's eyes about to
that's it.
focus
He
into
doesn't
that
screw around.
Z32.
That's it.
Yeah, we were
So
at Branson doing that one, and then this other one was at Super Lap Battle.
yeah,
Me and
that's
him, of
true.
course.
You guys pulled that in
Uh,
24 hours. Ugh.
Yeah, a complete swap, man. So great times, of course. I want to give a huge shout out to Ion. Happy birthday. Other mention we wanted to give is another happy birthday to our buddy Harold Wickman. Of course, man, great time. We just saw him at Texas Z Fest. He traveled from out of state to come be a part of the of Texas Z Fest
Yeah.
earlier this month. He is actually the recent owner of a brand new Z, that Rosewood,
Yeah.
was that purple-ish, you might call it, color.
Yeah.
Beautiful car. Of course, he's been very much into the Z community. Awesome guy. There he is. There's his car.
Yeah.
Um, Again, great friend. Again, when I saw him when we saw him at Texas Z Fest, obviously just a great time hanging out with him. So definitely want to give him some love this
Yeah.
evening. Saying
There's
birthday.
this is when we pulled that engine. He was my my hoist accompanier, so he
Yeah, there
helped
you
me.
go. There you go. Right behind you.
That's one of
Yes,
my
yes.
favorite photos. It was just we were pulling that nasty original nasty engine. It was just like he was right there with me. So yeah,
Awesome guy, man. I really
yeah.
enjoyed. Yeah,
Kudos to
yeah.
both those gentlemen. Happy birthday to both of them. We wish you many more years. So
Absolutely right, man. Oh, well, that's our comp by. Tell you what, man, while we're here, one more time, I'm going to go and give another comp by. Again, maybe not you, but me.
oh, to you. Okay. Mm. Get the juices rolling. So
Yeah.
but yeah, let's go ahead and step into Nissan news. We're changing things up here a little bit on the format. We're actually going to be going to smaller amounts of news and just trying to focus a little bit heavier on some of the motorsports and giving an opportunity to talk about topics like tonight's episode or interviews in the future. So you might start seeing us dwindle down to more important news in an effort to kind of save time and just kind of keep the hype up on the show as we kind of move throughout the episode. So some of the
Exactly.
feedback we got from some of you, so we'll try that. On that note,
Hmm.
go ahead, Mike. Let's talk about Nissan news tonight.
All right, man. The article that I want to share with you guys, and again, of course, I'll share my screen on this with you. Is actually, if for those who might remember, about this time last year, we did a mention regarding this event that was actually happening. Now, of course, a year later, this what's happening here is in full effect. I believe this team is about 1 month into their expedition, and of course, what I'm talking about here is what they call the epic pole-to-pole electric vehicle expedition, and this is actually happening. There are two British adventurers, husband and wife team, Chris and Julie Ramsey. They are set to become the first people to drive from the North Pole to the South Pole,
Hmm.
and they are doing this with the all-new Nissan Aria. This is a huge feat. Again, never been done before. Uh, it's quite. I mean, as you can imagine, this is quite an undertaking. In total, this excursion that's taking place as we speak, a total of 17,000 miles, driving through 14 countries. This event has actually been 4 years in the making. And so now, after all those years of hard work, what you're seeing here is actually through the Nissan media newsroom, where you can catch more of this, is that husband and wife team making their way into essentially, again, from north to south, a huge undertaking. They are in the all-new 2023 Nissan Aria. Actually, two, in fact. There is a modified Aria and then a stock one, stock Aria that they're being used. The stock Aria essentially might be considered a support vehicle, or
Something to
maybe
steal car
maybe
parts off of,
maybe a donor. Yes, exactly. Yes, yes, yes,
like a
yes, yes.
rolling donor.
Well,
Just
yeah.
so it's like
Well,
you
and
need a kidney, keep a friend with you. So you never know. So
yeah. Well, and you got to think about it though, is that, you know, first of all, they had to get the vehicle as far north as possible
mhm.
first, and then set up camp, essentially getting started. Um, and then find their way down. And one of the biggest challenges that you might imagine happening right now because of this is that they're using an all-electric vehicle. Well, where are the latest charging stations?
Where's
There
the
isn't.
power source? Yeah.
You need to be very, very self-sufficient in this journey, not only against terrain, but again, power. Yeah. Um, so as you can see here from some of the pictures in the Nissan newsroom, you can see that they're towing their own wind generator, which
Yeah.
I think is awesome as hell. That's the nerd part of me thinking that's pretty
You know,
freaking cool, man.
yeah, exactly. It's actually a telescoping wind fan. Isn't that nuts? So it actually kind of
Yes,
it goes up and then it
it'll.
captures some wind and some juice, put it into the batteries, and then they're keeping on down the road or they're stopping and juicing up. So again, there's no gas in this equation
At
whatsoever.
all.
They're towing along their gas provider. So that's pretty cool. So
Another thing too to think about too is the temperatures. Of course, it's very, very cold, and the terrain is one thing, but very cold, and really, it's a really good test to see how durable electric vehicles are because you think about temperature in general with the function of a battery and the life of an EV battery in this case. Um, it's got to be one amazing type of test. I'm sure they're getting a bunch of data from this as well. Nissan is the official partner of this excursion, so this is what really rang true to me as to something that I wanted to share with you guys. Um, I do need to share this with you as well. There are a few sites that you can go to keep up with with this expedition. One is the pole. It's their website. It is pole to pole ev.com, and of course you can see the site that we see here, and then of course you do have social media. I do see it here more of the Facebook channel. That's essentially where I've been getting my information.
mhm,
The one really cool thing, and honestly, this is a really interactive piece here, is that you can actually see from a live uh, uh, a map of the
mhm.
journey they've taken so far. And for those who can see what I have here online, you can see that they are, I mean, literally from the North Pole, uh, essentially driving in through the, you might say, the western half of Canada.
Mhm.
There are a number of interactive videos and pictures that you can actually click on, and those are actual pictures that that the
Yeah.
team has have taken.
They I was watching it the other day. They spotted a polar bear.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it was one
yes,
of the first couple of days, and it was like, holy crap. And
hmm
they made a few comments about how the tires are doing really well in that particular environment. So there's a lot that goes into this. I mean, and if you start thinking about all the dynamics that they're going to have, they're going to be going from a vast array of temperatures, terrains. So it's really kind of a test for the vehicle. It's a test for the all the supplied additional aftermarket things like tires. So we'll see how those hold up. So for all those people that are going to be out there getting the potentially picking up an Araya, it gives them
hmm
an opportunity to say, well, if those guys on pole to pole use these
uh,
tires, hell yeah, these are the tires and the setup that I'm going to use. Or they're going to learn
yeah,
from that and modify and move on. So I don't know. We're getting again. We're in the dating phase of this whole pole to pole kind of getting started and moving on. Not too long before these folks kind of start dipping their way into the United States. I would hope that they're going to do some kind of tour as they make their way through the United States and hopefully don't pass quickly through. If anybody is keeping up with these folks and has an opportunity to catch up with them when they start coming through
yes,
your area, whether it be Canada or the United States or even further south, um, definitely take photos. Let us know. Send them over here to the podcast, or again, just give them a high five. Let them know that they got back. Because
yeah,
when they first started this off, that I could see the social media being small, and now it's just growing and growing and growing all the time.
yeah.
So we're gonna keep sending them positive vibes and love, and try to make sure they've got all the support that they need from an emotional standpoint on our side.
Speaking of the journey that you're talking about, uh, as of the last post through their Facebook, was only a few days ago.
Mhm.
They were near Banff. Canada, which again, very very close to the U.S.
Yep.
border. So you
Yep.
will
Yep.
be seeing, for those that are on, let's say, the uh, northwestern part of the U.S. Keep, I would say, keep your eye on the live tracker. And how cool would it be to see this thing actually on the roads, making its way across, the U.S. And then getting into Central America, South America. How cool it would be if they actually found their way closer, in Texas, if we could
If they
stop,
come through, man, we gotta.
dude.
So we gotta do the whole above the highway.
Oh,
You know
the
what I
the whole
mean?
like banner and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah, we gotta.
Yes.
So we'll see if we
Uh,
do. We'll pipe dream it, but hopefully these folks pass through some point and we get an opportunity to kind of see them or cheer them on in some capacity. So,
Yes,
but
man. We
again,
we we support the team. Again, they've got an amazing journey that they've been on. They have a long way to go. We should let people know that they are not considering this as a race, but more of a mindful journey of discovery. They call it learning and hope, to share inspiring stories. To Of course, they did mention the need for tackling the climate crisis and just letting people know what EVs are capable of, and most particularly a Nissan EV is capable of. So I definitely, yeah, like you said, let's root them on, and I think what we'll be doing here in the upcoming weeks and episodes, I should say, we'll go ahead and check in on them, see where they're at. Again,
yeah,
they've got, I'm sure, many more, a few more months to go. This is
they've got
definitely
quite
it's
a
more of a
journey on their
marathon.
hands, especially if they take it in their own time, which is what they should do. That's what this is all about. So,
Hmm.
Amon chimed in. He said, "Lots of haters on this expedition, but I absolutely love it. The haters are the ones against electrical advancement naturally." And I would probably agree 100% with Amon on that one. It's just, if you can't respect it, to me, it's one of those human uh, the the human spirit stories to me, as much as it is a Nissan romanticized story of traveling the world. I mean, to me, it hits both buttons or checks both boxes for me. So
Yes.
I can't see this being nothing but win. So
How can you knock that? I mean, that's people are doing.
yeah,
They're following, again, 4 years in the making, and to actually be doing it now, like,
regardless of the power source,
regardless
that,
of,
of what's under
forget
the
the
hood, it doesn't matter. It's still a
forget the
very cool
details. They're
story. So
they're
yeah.
doing it, man. Yes, exactly.
All right.
It's
You
great
mentioned
comments.
earlier that Nissan was, really keeping a close eye because they're getting a lot of testing opportunities and a way to get some potential development and test and tune, if you will, from this vehicle as it makes its journey. But Nissan's they're no stranger to testing and torturing vehicles. I It was funny. I mean, there's a lot of Nissan news that's out. Nothing that I really wanted to kind of pull from, but there was a really old article that just happened to come up on my feed, and it was actually from 2015. But it still made me kind of blush. And we were kind of talking offline about the pole to pole about Nissan getting again that advancement from all the ability for this vehicle driving. And all the practicality and the benefit information that they're getting. But Nissan again is no stranger to torturing their vehicles. Jalopnik actually had a very old article that we mentioned pre Nissan Nerd, but I mentioned in my articles, and it was actually talked about how Nissan torture tests some of its SUV vehicles back at that time, mainly the Juke, the Qashqai, which isn't in our market, but the X Trail crossovers as well. So I'm going to give you out a few lists of some stuff that they did with their vehicles. And if you want to bring up the article, you're more than welcome to.
I'll
But
do that, sure.
and I'll read some excerpts from it. So Nissan issued a press release explaining that their crossover testing methods, and it just is kind of insane. So obviously some of these are obvious, but then some of these are a little more like wow. So they ran 1.4 million test miles just to make sure that their suspensions are up for the job, and that is no surprise for us. Most manufacturers are going to send their prototypes around the world X amount of times so they can kind of get that. But what they really test is all the extra little creature comforts. All the toughest testing is nothing compared to what stereo systems had to go through with Nissan. So Nissan actually has a test at that time was they were playing the stereo at high volume for a total of 1,200 days. That's 1,728,000 minutes using specifically selected music tracks to encompass the widest range of pitch and beat. What would those things be? A compilation of Mariah Carey and German house music slammed together. I swear to God. And they basically just close the doors on that all the time. They are subduing that vehicle to not only that noise, they're also running volcanic ash in the interior, the vents, and they have as well. They have robots that are pushing the buttons when to go up and down over 30,000 model. That's a minimum. Just that's kind of
Wow.
crazy. They have a robot that
30.
opens up the bonnet 1.2 million times. That's 40. Yeah, well, lifting the bonnet. It's That's fucking. Excuse me. That's
Mm.
crazy. That's just. It blows my mind. The window wipers. They spend 480 hours fighting with the rain, snow, and peanut butter.
Peanut butter?
Peanut
What are
butter.
they doing with peanut butter? On the
rubbing
windshield?
peanut rubbing peanut butter on the wipers because bears like to kind of chew and pull wiper arms. So they rub on
Okay.
the wiper arms to let bears basically beat the crap out of them.
So they'll take
So
a
I don't know if they have a
vehicle.
Nissan specific bear. Yeah,
Is this bear on
yeah.
payroll? Yeah, is this
It might be. I don't know if there's a Tinkerbell or a
s-
Bobo
s- s-
equivalent bear
s-
that gets paid
some
in salmon or
retired
something.
circus bear? Yeah.
Sub-retired bear, he's on his latter part of his years, so he's a little easier on the wipers. But needless to say, for them to go that level is pretty epic. So
Mm.
if and it's funny at the end of the article. So here's an idea for you: if you have a Nissan crossover, get a bear, put some lipstick on it, turn your stereo to 11, playing Mariah Carey's fantasy slash German house beat, and lock those doors. And I'm going to make this relevant and bring it up to speed. Potentially give that bear cocaine, and then boom, and then see how that test works out for you.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
in the newest crossover compared to the old types. Now, what they are doing these days with the cutbacks, maybe they cut back the bear, maybe they're not using peanut butter on wipers, or they're going to maybe softer music. But I can
May-
tell you, the 2015 era of SUV vehicles were put through the ringer, which is why they're so amazing now as secondhand vehicles. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
That's a
So
good point, man. Again, I think obviously I think Japanese vehicles manufacturers have quite a reputation for being super reliable. Again, the endurance tests, like you said, those are some insane endurance tests that Nissan is putting through its onto its cars.
well,
You
we
said,
we
yeah,
we talked about the kid who was
S-
the intern.
the intern, the smell kid. Oh no, no, the
This
one that was going through traffic. Even he was
Yeah,
monitoring traffic
he gets
patterns.
paid to sit in traffic in one of the new Nissan vehicles. That's his gig. That's his whole job.
And like I
So
said, and he said it has to do with the creature comforts like sound, radio,
what about the?
wipers.
You remember the nose guy? I remember you remember that guy?
Yes, yes, him, and then there was a also another person in Europe doing the same thing. They were doing deciding what the smell of a new vehicle of a new Nissan, what it should smell like, what kind of emotions it should give you when you enter that vehicle, which is quite again a very detailed way to to invest in a car so that the customer actually feels like this car is doing it for them.
That's it. Then our new cruising music and Mariah Carey's Butterfly / German house music, that is going to be what our new cruising anthem is going to be. Just so we
Really?
can figure out the torture test amongst
You
ourselves
know
and
what? We should
see
we
how
should
tough
test
we are.
ourselves. Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I know. Okay, let's just talk about Mariah Carey for a second. She's got range, right? She.
I hate, I hate it. I hate it.
You
Just
see
like
what I
that.
mean?
Garage door
Yeah,
open somewhere.
just
That's it.
like that. I'm thinking that, and I'm thinking like I was thinking like Axl Rose, like he's got range too,
Think?
but
You
it's,
think?
but
All right,
I don't
maybe.
know, I don't know,
Wow.
but
Maybe,
the
maybe.
octaves, it's all about the octaves,
All
man.
right,
They want the
comments.
lows and they want the
If you
highs.
have a torture test for a stereo system, I want an artist, I want an album. And give us that and then we'll see if that hits the criteria of a
You
good
know,
torture test for your album.
next road trip that we go on, we need to go ahead and dedicate a particular amount of time where we go
That's it.
live.
And it can only be at 11. That's it. It's got to be
Yes, it's
full
got to
knob.
be.
You can't hit any fast forward. It's literally super glue the dials just like they do, and that's it. That's how we're gonna roll. So we'll see how
Okay,
it goes from there.
okay.
But 1,200 hours of Mariah
That's
Carey's.
4 years. I mean, think about 365 days a year. That's close to 4 years of testing.
No,
Well, 1,200 days. You said 1,200 days,
1,200
right?
hours.
Oh, no,
Is it 1,200
days.
days? That's
12.
not right.
Yeah,
Is it 1,200
1,200.
days? What did I
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
Good
I'm
God,
looking at
man!
I'm looking at the Jalopnik article right now, man. Yeah, they're
I wonder
saying
what the HR
1,200
department had to do.
days.
Like they were just like, "Look, man, I can't take it. Like we have to complete this test, Jeff. I know, but I can't take this anymore. Like transfer
You
me
know,
out or do
this.
something."
Yeah. Well, then I start thinking about like what the FBI does to torture or the CIA does to torture people. Like, is this?
Guantanamo Bay kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It was just
It,
like, yeah.
are they? You know what I mean? Is this where are they getting their tactics from? I want to say Nissan may have hired somebody who's a former military strategist or military.
I'm going to say Nissan has also kicked up their level of quality testing, and this is all behind closed doors because they're no longer telling anybody like trade secret. But I'm going to say cocaine and bears and peanut butter are still involved. But just to make it relevant, because they might think, hey, cocaine bears in the United States are a thing, so maybe we just need to get like maybe they're just using like not to hurt the bear. They're probably just like street grade cocaine or something like that. But I don't know. Or
Low
maybe
grade,
just
low grade.
low
Yeah.
grade. Yeah, just like or maybe no dose, just something like that. Or just like a slow pour espresso or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But
Hmm.
Amon said cocaine bear. Yes, cocaine bear is very topical right now.
Yeah,
Berto
very
Matic gave a
much.
suggestion on an album. He said Steve Miller Band's "Fly Like an Eagle."
All
Oof.
right, all
Yeah,
right.
right. It's that's doable. I could probably do that album for that one. I'm gonna say like the ultimate torture test, an album that's just horribly bad,
Ooh,
worse. Oh man, I don't know. We'll
ooh.
we'll let that fester and we'll go through because that's a long, dirty topic we can talk about forever. But
We'll
on
think
that
about that one.
note, so Nissan obviously puts all this love into their cars and dedication to trying to put the best quality unit that they can out there on the streets. But again, sometimes there is the occasional hole in the net, if you will, and that does come through. Now, in this episode, it's been a while since we've done these, but Mike, you've got the most recent updates on PSAs, right?
I sure do, guys. Of course, as part of our studying and trying to find the most recent Nissan news articles, I think Miles, I can speak for the both of us that when we see news of a recall, it sort of is mandatory that we share this with those who listen, just as a courtesy, if they are. An owner of one of these vehicles. So there is one recall that we will go ahead and share with you guys this evening. Nissan is recalling the 2023 Rogue, Pathfinder, and Infiniti QX60. The reason for this is a potential defect in the driver seat frame, the welds of that driver seat frame, which can cause separation in a collision. It is, according to this article, a rear inboard seat bracket. In total, the estimated number of vehicles affected are about 12,000. There is no easy way to detect the issue, whether or not your vehicle has this issue. So, what Nissan is advising is that you do have your seats inspected at the nearby dealership by a service technician. If this recall is detected in your vehicle, they, of course, will work to remove and replace this defect. Service time to do that should take less than 2 hours to correct. Uh, if again, for those who aren't notices from Nissan should be coming out here no later than June. However, of course, we got your back on this one, guys. This is hopefully you heard it first with us. Again, this is for the 2023 Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, and Infiniti QX60 for these seat issues. So if you're driving one of these vehicles and you kind of feel something loose in your seat, you know what? You might it might be more than just a hunch. You might want to go ahead and get that checked out.
Yeah.
You aren't wrong in this case.
Yeah, Nissan, some may say, why are these guys talking about recalls and everything? Because recalls are safety and they're very important. We want to make sure that you enjoy the life of your vehicle. Here on the show, we, we want to make sure that the brand is always stay strong. But at the same time, these recalls are usually completely 100% free. And at the end of the day, it's all about safety and making sure that your vehicle is updated to the best that it can be. So that's why we try to talk about these recalls and whatnot. So,
You're right. You're right.
yep. Yep. So let's go ahead and
Mm.
talk a little bit. I guess we're done with recalls at the moment.
Hmm.
Thankfully, there's not a whole lot other ones that are out there. So we're going to talk a little bit about motorsports from here,
Ooh,
which
oh
is
yeah.
definitely what I want to talk about more than anything else. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening for Super GT. Now, Super GT, as of late, has finally kicked off. I know we were talking about it in February and we're like, it felt like it was going to take forever before we got into April and the first race. But the round one has now begun, has just finished actually for the Super GT. And
Oh,
Nissan surprisingly had a great result. And I'm here to kind of talk to you a little bit about that result today. So I'm going to run a little YouTube video in the background. As you can see,
sure. Got it.
catch that. Meow, meow, meow. And we'll talk a little bit about the results from this week, this past weekend, just recently. So again, that was the 15th and the 16th. So it's been more than a week, but needless to say. So let's talk a little bit about the 300 series. Now, again, we've got GTRs in the 300 series, and then of course in the 500 series, Nissan is fielding Nissan Zs, with of course the new Nissan Z being the official pace car, which is awesome. So there's a lot of nice Z and GTR love in this new series. Now let's talk a little bit about qualifying, and pretty much the whole weekend was a pretty rainy weekend. Saturday,
Mm.
the 15th, was an extremely rainy day, which caused a lot of frustration for some drivers and a lot of moving around things to make sure that they were trying to finish in the points or finish where they needed to be for qualifying. Saturday, kind of off and on. So I just wanted to kind of lay down what kind of a race weekend this was. Now,
Uh,
in the 300 series for qualifying, again, this was on the 15th. It turned out that the Realize Nissan Mechanic Challenge GTR, which we were hoping was usually going to be finishing in the money in qualifying, didn't really have the best turnout that day. They ended up taking eighth, and
mm.
13th place was the Gainer Tenax GTR. Everybody else from there is a little further down the line. Unfortunately, not kind of getting where we wanted to be. Now, in qualifying for Saturday, was in the 500 series. This was actually remarkable. The Nitera Motul Z ended up putting in first, and the
Ooh.
Motul Altec Z came in second. So they were actually leading the line in that regards, and they were so
Okay.
fast on the pace they were almost a second ahead of the third place. So
That
those two kind of just took off for the day, and then
that
that was out in qualifying for the day. Yeah.
that and for those who aren't familiar with racing, a 1 second gap uh, between cars, or much less the others in a field, is very, very impressive. Typically, you might see a few tenths or a few thousandths of a lap. Um, that's quite a feat, Miles. Honestly.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the race day. Now, as you can see in some of this right here, the first part of the day was pretty dry. And then from here, just about, I would say, lap 16 on, it starts to get on and off. And then it just goes into a full on monsoon at the end of this race. Let's talk a little bit about how the day ended for these guys. Now, in the for the 300 series, and I'll just give you that because I'm just going to show you the 500 series for the day and not the 300 because we didn't have the best results. But for the race in the 300 series, 10th place came out for the realized Nissan Mechanic Challenge GTR. They ended up
Hmm.
falling down from 8th into 10th. And
Okay.
then 11th place, the Ponos Gainer GTR wound up sitting there for the day, and kind of a few DNFs for the other Tanax Gainer GTRs. Unfortunately, they had some enough, no real damage, but just enough to kind of put them out for the day because the race actually is halted a little bit later on, just shy of a few laps before the finish. Now, going into the 500 series, this is where it kind of gets remarkable. As you can see right here in lap 15, those two Z's, the Multialtic Z and the Nitera Multi Z, are running out. Now, this is a crucial part of the race, which
Okay.
kind of gets crazy. So both running neck and neck, as you can see there. This is
Hmm.
only lap 15. So one pulls off while the other one stays on track. Now, this is going to be crucial later on because right after this, the rain comes.
Ooh.
So he uh, and this is the Moto Altic Z that pulls off, and then to the over here to the other who's still on field is the Nitura Motul Z, and this is kind of crucial because of what happens here next. Now, this is lap 15. The Moto Altic Z is going in for tire change because it knows that the rain is coming on. You can see some of the spots um, on the camera. It's going to start raining and coming on. So he jumps the gun and gets in front of everybody and gets out there and puts some rain tires. Rain kind of just makes it on. Now from here, you got your spin-offs. Again, that's a Nax GTR. That's going to end it for that car in the 300 series. Again, 300, 500 running at the same time. And as you can
Yes.
see, the Nitera Motul Z comes in for tire change, and this is somebody else is coming for a tire change, and this is where. So as you saw, both of them were kind of in the lead, but the Nitera Z drops back because it actually gets stuck in the pits right here
Oh
because the
no.
remember that Snax GTR rolled off.
Yes.
Remember you just saw it a second ago. So what
Yep.
happens right here? All these cars are going to get stuck. So they
Uh,
literally have a red light, as you can see on the halt. Every entire lead is kind of stopped, and it just causes you've got a yellow that's going out for the course. So they'll
so they.
continue to run from here, but that Nitera Z's got to, and then yeah,
So
and then
it
this
sounds
Morelli, which is previously the Impulse Z,
Calsonic Impul.
it's got
Yes.
a bit of a fight on its hands as well. Yeah, the Morelli Red
Wow.
Blue Z, it
Yeah.
fights a strong battle for the entire day, but unfortunately, it's kind of just getting passed and passed and passed. And look at the that are crazy as the day goes on. And I'll give forward here, and you can kind of see how the rain's kind of going back and forth and back and forth. And those that kind of stayed on rain tires, and there's the Morelli, and
Hmm.
that's the realized GTR that actually went out. My apologies.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
here we get a little closer. The race actually ends up getting called just a few more after that, and this
Oh.
is the full on caution, and they red light the entire race. So
So
it's
did
60.
the
They
race?
stopped the race
Yeah.
short of 82 full laps.
S- So
Yeah, because they're starting to
uh,
get cars that are going off. It just wasn't safe out there.
okay, so the race was called short at that point. So you're saying, of course, the GT
Hmm.
500 class Z's qualified a 1-2. Then you get into the race. Yeah.
Well, that's
how
what I'm
did
going to get
Z's
into
finish?
next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did the final ended? It's crazy because the Nitera Motul Z was leading qualifying the day before. It actually switched because of that whole tire transition. Really,
Yeah.
it switched the Motul Z to be the one on top. So the Motul Alltech Z ended up taking first place with the best lap of 1 minute 20 seconds, 0.712 at the track there at Okayama. And then the Nitira Motul Z ended up taking second place for the day. So we took in both places, first and second, but they just switched due to that whole
Oh,
tire snafu and with the weather and everything for the day. So yeah, a good result
wow.
for Nissan overall for the day. So yeah,
That's great, man. You said this is the first
as
round
you
of the
could
season. What a
see,
hell
they
of a
for the
start.
day.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yep.
Hell of a start, man. That's
Yeah.
great to
So
hear.
here's the two first and second place drivers kind of figuring everything out, and they come to the realization that they have it for the day. So they're marking well, walking to the circle. Pretty much the so, yeah. So our next
Awesome.
race that's going to be coming up here, we've got a little bit of time. May 3rd, this upcoming weekend, will actually be at Fuji Speedway, and it take place again May 3rd and 4th. We'll keep you updated and try to get you some fresh links once the English versions are now available and made available through YouTube.
I see. I see. I see. All right. All right. Man, great coverage, man. I appreciate you sharing that, man. Again, upcoming rounds. Let's hope that Nissan keeps it up, and that hopefully we get some great weather
Hmm.
throughout the entire race. So I know,
I hope so too. Yeah.
yeah, awesome, man. Well, all right, man. Next up on the chopping block here for motorsports update, I'll take the next one, Miles. What I wanted to cover is the Formula E, the NISMO, Nissan Formula E team, their efforts in Formula E. So we'll go ahead and get into it. I'll share my screen on this. Like I said, it's been a while since we've done a motorsports update, so we're going to just jump into where the team currently is standing. Just this past weekend, there was a competition, uh, rounds 7 and 8. It was a doubleheader at the Tempelhof Airport circuits in Berlin, Germany. Nissan Formula E team honestly had a challenging weekend, and we'll get into details on that. But first, let's start off with round 7. That was on this past Saturday, April 22nd. Our two drivers, Sasha Fenestras and Norman Naito, qualified. Let's start off with Sasha first. He qualified 18th and finished in P12. Um, Getting on to Norman, qualified a little bit better, Q16, and finished in 13th place. Um, I should go ahead and say that both of these races were quite, you might say, uneventful as far as their driving. Didn't exactly have much to worry about in terms of contact. They both finished each race, so that's always a, a bonus. To win a race, you must first finish the race. So that's the way I'm looking at it here. Again, round 7, finishing 12th and 13th place, did not bring any points for Nissan on that day. Of course, you have to finish P10 or or under. Uh, Getting into Sunday, which was the round 8, also again same track. Sasha came in. He qualified 20th and finished P11, which is a huge jump. Actually, if you look at the numbers, that was the biggest jump that our team had throughout a race. And then Norman, our second driver, qualified 22nd and finished 16th. Again, not bringing in any points for the team this weekend, though. However, did experience a complete race. Again, uh, nothing out of the ordinary when it comes to contact with other cars, etc. Um, like I said, as you can see from these positions and where they finished in the race, there was really good pace within the cars. But honestly, it's in qualifying that they struggle. You know, they start off rather low on the grid, rather far back on the grid, and it isn't until the race that they can kind of really show what the promise that they have. From the NISMO article, which I have here, I'll go ahead and recap a few pieces. Uh, Essentially, a lot of pros and cons. Let's say here the the pros of the race here, as quoted here, was that the team has good race strategy. As you can tell, they have good pace. They finish in a higher position from which they started. Also, there was a really good compliment on their power management ability within on the cars, looking pretty good. The issues from which they think they are struggling with, two of them here. One is tire degradation during the race. They're saying that they need to improve on. But I think the biggest struggle that they've had here in these last two races were there was a particular set of upgrades that the team was expecting to have with their cars by this race. However, not all of them made it on time for this particular race. And they were all performance related. And so I think really is what brought around a major difference into where we saw ourselves, our actual racing positions at the end of the weekend. So honestly, I believe it's a matter of continuing with these upgrades, getting them on the cars and reliable as quickly as possible. And then obviously, there are 7 more rounds left in the 2023 season. And so we're just under the half, we're just past the halfway point, but still plenty of promise that we can try to get from our Nissans in this series. Our standings, though, we are 15th and 19th as our drivers stand at 15th and 19th, and Nissan is currently in 10th place as a constructor, having 18 points. So again, a little low, but again, staying optimistic for this second half of the season. Meanwhile, I do want to say one thing. Of course, the McLaren Formula E team, for those who don't know, is powered by Nissan. So I think it's a good thing that we share their race results as well. Their two drivers are actually doing better. They're sitting at 9th and 10th position in the driver standings. And
Okay.
McLaren as itself is 6th place as a constructor currently with 72 points. So in terms of their success with their Nissan power plant, seem to be doing a little bit of a better time. But again, for us being Nissan enthusiasts, I figured it's important that we give notice into that. So there is a lot of potential with these cars. It's just a matter of getting things just dialed in at the right time. Um, Moving into the next round. Next round is actually happening in about a week and a half from now. This is May 6th. It is a single race. We are going to be at the historic Monaco Street Circuit. Of course, in France, off the coast of France, it is a 2-mile circuit, 19 turns. This will be the third year that Formula E is at this location. It is the full circuit, similar to what you'd see at a Formula One race, just for example. Um, it's a very, very tight circuit for those who know Monaco. Always has
Yeah.
been. Uh, Someone had recently quoted it as it's like riding your bike in the living room. That's kind of how they.
It's true, man. Like if you even when you hear about Monaco on F1, it's like Jesus Christ, these guys like everything is a wall, everything's a tight hairpin, and it's just like holy crap, it's right there. Everything it just wants to kill you and destroy you and put you into a wall and spin out, and then an elevation change thrown in there too as well. It's like good God,
the
like
a lot of the street circuits, especially Monaco, it does not leave much opportunity for overtaking.
Mm-mm.
and so qualifying is very, very important. So as we were talking earlier here with the Formula E team, if they can really figure out their challenges with qualifying and get a better starting position, they should hopefully, yes, complete this race in a better, hopefully with points is really what we're looking for, to get in better position for the series. Again, of course, we wish them the best of luck, and we'll be keeping up with them with on as we get into the upcoming episodes of ours.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, let's talk a little bit about an update for an event that we keep near and dear to our heart. It's the Nissan Challenge, which is actually here in the United States, West Coast mainly, but they're slowly developing and branching out. But again, let's talk a little bit about what the series has had this year. Now, again, this is an 8 round series. It started off in February 11th to be exact. Currently, right now, they had just finished up this earlier part of this month was the third round, which was held at Button Willow Raceway Park. The next upcoming round is going to be round four here in June at Willow Springs International. But I want to talk a little bit about what the recent developments have been and talk a little bit about just standings and some updates. Now, with that being said, there's always records that can be set, and we always look for who beat whose time from the pre-existing year, and it again has happened again this year. So I did want to give a shout out on some of the current records that were broken just recently in some of the pre-existing rounds in the Streets of Willow for Class One. Charles Parks in his GTR actually broke one of his best times here back in February. So want to give him a shout out to that time. And then he also came back and broke his time just last month at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. So he's improving and constantly stepping up, as you would think, Mr. Charles Parks, owner of Power Tricks Performance. So we're going to keep sending good vibes his way and wish him the best of luck as he moves up and keeps hitting what he needs to hit for his class one. Now, there's actually four classes this year officially, and that was class one. Class two, we've had some developments and additional record breaking. Luke Lederman in February, Streets of Willow, he ended up breaking his the best time or the track record,
Oh wow.
and he took the lead for that one. And let me see here. And in class three, Adam Zia in his Z33 in February broke the record in his class for the Streets of Willow. And let's see
Nice.
here. And there was one more. Mario Hinojosa driving a 370Z broke the record at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway in last month. Class
Wow.
four. Let's see what we've got here, which is the mixer, the all in of just awkward vehicles, which I love. Edgar Freeman, a good friend of the show,
Yeah.
he actually ended up breaking the record over at Streets of Willow for the class four. So kudos to him. And that's it. So I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Edgar Freeman and all the other folks that kept pushing the envelope for their classes. We wish them the best. Again, challenge series, you can continue to monitor it. We like to always recommend checking out their Facebook posts and just signing up for it because it'll keep you updated. And there's some really good photo coverage that is kind of coming out of that as the series begins to grow. We're hoping that they start getting a lot more video footage, and then you can also check out their blog through
Mhm.
corner3motorsports.com. And
Yeah.
again, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. What I was gonna say though too, how you mentioned uh, Edgar Furman and John. We actually had a recent episode with them earlier this year as they were entering their 2023 season. Great bunch of guys. It sounds from what you mentioned, one of the key words I keep on hearing you say was beating their track record or their personal
It's them
record.
beating everybody else, but then you got to beat your better time. You're racing yourself nine
Yeah,
times out of ten, and these are a very low key group of guys. Like you would think that it's like, oh, it's competitive and everything else, but the reality is they're just kind of one big family. After talking with them, and they're
yeah,
always trying to help the new people that are getting into it,
Yeah.
getting them developed and kind of moving on from there. So it really is kind of like one big drivers meeting, but it just happens to be all Nissan specific, which is something that kind of chimes for us really well. So again, if you
Yeah.
have an opportunity to follow this series, we highly recommend it. Again, you have the new series that's coming up. You still have rounds three. That is going to be the next, excuse me, round four, which will be at June 3rd at Willow Springs International. Round five, Button Willow Raceway. Round six, back to Willow Springs for the streets of Willow Springs. And then round seven, Chuckwaller Valley Raceway. And finally, finishing up around December, Button Willow Raceway. So these are very spaced out. It still gives you an opportunity to kind of check these folks out. If you want to start learning the ins and outs and being competitive in that group, you're more than welcome to check out again everything for the series through the Facebook page, or you can get updates through the corner3motorsports.com page.
Awesome, man.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, again, definitely look forward to seeing them more. Again, great group of guys. If you are in the Southern California area and care to even just be a spectator, if you have the most remote piece of interest in tracking your Nissan, this is a great opportunity. You really are fortunate to come see these guys. So awesome, man, awesome. Well, I got the next one, Miles. I think this will wrap up our motorsports segment. The last series we want to cover as part of our motorsports update is the GT4 America series. I will share my screen on this one. Let's go with it. There we go. All right. So, the I just want to preface the GT4 America series is rather new to me, and the reason why is because this is actually Nissan's first time in a long time to actually be a competitor in GT4. Of course, they are bringing out the GT4 spec Nissan Z, which has they recently had debuted at SEMA late last year, and just earlier this month was their first competition with their pair of cars. Um, the, the the racing team which is running these Z's is actually Tech Sport Racing. Their two entries, the number 22 and 23 car. Let's start off with car number 22. The drivers are Eric Powell and Colin Harrison. And then for the number 23 car, our buddy Brian Hidecotter and Tyler Stone, drivers of that car. So this race, this last earlier this month was at the Sonoma Raceway in California. Uh, the one of the things I learned, of course, similar to how you mentioned, Miles, in the Super GT series, there are multiple classes racing at the same time, and GT4 America is no different. In fact, there are four classes of
a lot of traffic.
cars competing at the same time, and you're absolutely right. Traffic, depending on the size and the length of the track. Every track's different. You get varying degrees of traffic. So it was very, very interesting to see. And this particular race, what I recall, was a decent amount of yellow flag. Honestly, cars spinning out, hitting the wall, trying to get these cars and drivers back to safety while still uh, uh, completing the required number of laps to race and to complete the races. So the field in general, a number of cars in these races at Sonoma or in this series for 2023, about just over 40 cars in total. It's a rather big grid, like you said. Um, let's go ahead and start with the number 23 car here. The big So the number 22 car qualified Q1. In qualifying one, they qualified 27th place, finished 28th. The number 23 car qualified uh, uh, 43rd, but finished P25. Honestly, the big day, the day that you really want to have the where you saw the most success that our team had was on Sunday. Car number 22 uh, started in 31st place and finished. This is the raw data here. P4. However, they finished third in their class. So actually, in the first race of the season, Nissan had a podium win, a trophy. Again, champagne sprayed. Very, very much a huge moment for the team. Of course, car number 23 qualified. Uh, 23rd and finished in P6. So on that Sunday race, you could say that our Nissan cars finished third place and sixth place, which was a excellent showing here. Again, number 22 car driven by Eric Powell and Colin Harrison finished third in their class, fourth overall. Brian Hodcotter and Tyler Stone in the number 23 Z car finished seventh in their class and 13th overall. Again, with a very heavy field, as you mentioned, Miles, though, again, a very excellent first showing. So, again, these results were the race completed earlier this month. So for any of you guys that have been on social media, I'm sure you saw the results, the celebrations, the hugs from the team. I mean, it really was a very good time for the team. And again, social media just uh, was sure to share the great news for the Tech Sport Racing team at Sonoma. Moving on, though, the next race will actually happen this upcoming weekend, April 28th through the 30th. This race will be at the NOLA Motorsports Park in Louisiana. What you can do is go to the GT4 America website for more details. There's also social media where you can get information about the racing. Um, there is live coverage that you can find, specifically, I believe, for me personally, having gone through the YouTube channel. Um, Honestly, again, with having such a strong showing at Sonoma, for me personally, we're really looking forward to seeing the Nissan team continue this dominance. Like you said, we're seeing the new Z being very dominant in Super GT, even in Japan. You know what? If we can keep this up here in the U.S., I mean, it really is a good, an amazing testament to the Z's ability to win and its in its performance. You know. Um, Last thing I had here, though, guys, is that for those who are planning to attend the GT4 racing at NOLA Motorsports Park this weekend, there is actually a car corral that is model specific. So a Nissan car corral has been organized at the Motorsports Park. I actually got a page here on that. Again, Nissan car corral at NOLA Fanatec GT World Challenge America. Date and times here. We'll go ahead and include these links in our show notes to kind of let you guys know where you can register to be a part of this car corral. Um, Again, it it's an opportunity for us as enthusiasts to share our love and enthusiasm for the race team. Again, in Louisiana this weekend. So. Um, it will be happening pretty soon here. So, guys, if you are online, uh, let's root for them, and we'll have the results for you guys in the next episode.
Very good.
Hmm.
Well, that concludes everything that we're going to talk about here from motorsports. And today, we're going to bring back something that we normally don't do enough of, really. And that's our back alley chat. And back alley chat, we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, just ridiculous stuff from time to time. And we started talking about weight savings, as I kind of like to harp on from time to time. And
Yeah.
so me and Mike decided to really dive into our lightweight lug nuts and service. How important are those? Are they? Should you be going steel? Should you be going aluminum? What other aspects should you go for good nut safety? And then, of course, anti-theft issues as well. So we're just going to kind of tackle this all together and talk a little bit about nuts, what you should probably use, what applications work best for you, and then let's talk a little bit about safety as well. So for the average street guy, I mean, most people, when we talk about lug nuts, they're mostly a concern about theft for the most part. So if you're like this poor GTR that's behind us, who's unfortunately had its shoes stolen, there was probably a concern with locking lug nuts. Would have been a preventative scenario with this. So let's talk a little bit about locking lug nuts, and then we're going to talk a little bit about for those more extreme cases for people that are trying to lose weight and whatnot. So
Okay.
if you have a street vehicle, for the most part, everybody or everybody should know that it's good to probably alternate to a set of security locks. I personally, on a street setup, love the stock security lugs because they're almost impossible to replicate, and
Oh,
and you're they're great. But if you ever lose the damn security
the
lug,
key,
the
the
key,
yes.
it is a nightmare to get those off. And hopefully, you have a good vendor that knows how to take those off with confidence and not destroy your rims in the process. So, if you get a chance, you can find a really good set of potential used or secondhand or new in box options through eBay or through the dealers, believe it or not, because a lot of people don't take advantage of that, but they are readily available. Now,
That's what I was wondering because if I remember correctly, at least in the past, if not still, the wheel locks are a factory option
mhm,
in most
that you
cases.
have to
Yeah.
purchase them usually, so they're not something you can get, and you can do that and pay the markup and all that kind of fun stuff. But when you buy your vehicle, it's something that you can, if you're running stock wheels or something like that, or even aftermarket, a little bit later on in the future planned, just think about something. Now, most people will go and just kind of do your normal purchase of Gorilla wheel locks. And
Yeah.
but the problem is there's so many units that are sold out there that you're not any real thief or professional thief that's gonna be out there in their main and they have any real backing or series of experience stealing wheels.
For the truly invested thief.
The
Yeah.
truly invested thief who's going after really good stuff. Case in point, guess what? They're probably going to have a set of gorilla locks. So
Same
you want to
keys.
alternate from something that's off the normal path. So again, I
Ooh.
usually recommend that. Now let's talk a little bit about materials. There are aluminum options out there. There's now titanium options, and then of course you have your traditional steel options. And we're talking about a specific locking key. Now that can either be for one lug out of the set, or if it,
Yeah.
it can be for the entire set all around. Gorilla and most aftermarket units make an entire unit, so it does all 20, if you
All
will,
of them. Yeah.
or you just have one. So there's kind of two worlds that you can kind of feather between. And then we're talking about material. So there's lots of options and a lot of material that's out there. So what do I do in that particular case? Well, again, it's all about rarity. If you're going to be daily driving and parking this out in in front of your apartment, or say in front of your house, or you're scared about that, I would make a recommendation for picking up something that is a strong wheel
Yeah.
luck nut set, but making sure that it's an option that's available that you can readily get the key, but you're looking for that scarcity, but so somebody will not know. It's just my recommendation. Now, some
Yeah.
people will even just go to two different locking sets on the
Okay.
vehicle. And that's if you
Okay.
truly have a good old school set of tires. Like you got a set of Watanabes that you pulled off of Joss or eBay Japan and you do
Yeah.
not want them to get stolen, pick yourself up two different security lugs and make it hard for them to get those suckers off. You know what I mean? That's what
Y-
I would highly recommend. But I like for daily tried and true steel lugs, open face steel lugs if you can,
Open.
because the cap
Yeah.
ones, if you ever decide to go to like a longer stud, like say
Yeah.
you're going to start doing some weekend track events and you want to go to a longer stud or something a little with a little more tensile strength,
Yeah.
um, sometimes you can go with longer studs or you can go find like that. I personally like a little bit of a longer stud. So when I
Mhm.
have to put wheels on in a hurry, I can kind of get that guide on.
Yeah.
But then I go to an open wheel, like an open lug nut, and that's
Yeah.
made out of steel, and go
Yeah.
from there. But that's for like daily, occasional. I like to hit the twisties a lot, and
Mhm.
then the occasional autocross, and that's really where I kind of live, and all
Yeah.
my cars
Well,
kind of live. You know.
you bring up a lot of good points, and I've been writing down a few ideas as well when it comes to selecting. Who knew there were so many factors that played into wheel lug nuts, wheel locks in general, right?
Hmm.
You mentioned material, right? It comes down to application. Yeah. First of all, yeah. How often are you driving it? Again, some people do it just for the Instagram of it all, right? They just want the uh,
The new shoes.
just the new
Yeah, that's
shoes,
it.
the setup. Of course, you can go with different colors and anodizations
Yeah.
depending on material. You've got different styles. Like you said, I am a big fan of the open lug because it gives you, uh, again, if there is a change being made later. How many times, and Miles, and I know you know this because you, in your side time, will roll fenders and add spacers and
I
lug
roll
nuts.
fenders. I check offsets for folks pre-purchase, so I have a
Yes.
tool that actually does all that. And then
Yeah.
I fender roll, and then I
Yeah.
shave tires too as well for those
Yeah.
guys going to track. So
And how many times has it been, at least when in your early days, when you would spend hours on a job, new lug nuts, wheel spacers, you put the
mhm,
wheels back on, and all of a sudden those lug nuts won't fit anymore because they're capped and
mhm.
they can only go so far
The
down. So you're
spacing,
modifying. Now
yeah.
you're cutting up perfectly good lug nuts.
For the longest time, aftermarket lug nuts were really an option for anybody that was buying aftermarket wheels because factory usually give you the big fat openings where you can fit a nice big fat socket with a sleeve on it so you're not scratching it up. When you go to the
Yeah.
aftermarket stuff, sometimes it's a tighter fit. So that means you have to go to a thinner socket or you have to take that socket and turn it down on a mill, sadly, so you
Yes.
can fit it into that socket. I believe it, I've had to do that. Like I have sockets that I've had to turn down a couple thousandths
Oh,
just to make sure to fit. And then I have to put a protective sleeve on it because I'm just that kind of a nerd, right?
yeah.
But the thing that comes down to it is, you had to go to an aftermarket lug nut, and these guys, I mean, they'll drop 3, 4, $5,000 on a set of new tires and new rims and tires, and then they're
Yeah.
going with a $40 set of lug nuts that everybody
Yes.
and their mother has, and I'm like, dude, I was like, change it
Yeah.
up, homie. Like, got to do something different.
And you did mention how you mentioned them as being gorilla locks. I think what you mean by that is the brand that you can find at every
Correct.
car parts store there is.
Pretty
You want to
much.
go to a special. I mean, is there such
Try to
thing
go
as
an
a
online vendor. Yeah,
specialty?
there's tons
Yeah,
of online vendors that make stuff available, readily available, and then they're fairly light. All we'll talk a little bit about weight savings and things like that in here just a
yeah.
few moments, and then the need for hub centric rings if they aren't already built into your rotors or things like that. And
That.
we'll nerd out that in here just a few minutes when I get towards the higher end stuff. But kind
Okay.
of going back into lug nuts and the purposes of all that is if you're driving on the street and you're worried about somebody kind of taking your wheels, or you just want that level of security, because that's one of the few things on a vehicle that can easily, sadly, be taking, they'll put you in a situation like this where they're putting you up on blocks and believe it or not, people are like, "Oh, my wheels got stolen," but the reality is, as an insurance adjuster myself, who does these type of jobs, there's a
Yeah.
lot more damage that kind of comes with it. They end up scratching up splitters. Like this vehicle's leaning, and the whole splitter's
Yes.
cracked. The vehicle sits on rotors. I've seen these things dropped on rotors. Now you need a new set of rotors, and the
Rips.
alignment's
Rips.
all out of spec and it's all out of whack. Or they
Ooh.
dropped it and they try to jack up the car and they left something in the center of it and then it hits the oil pan or the tranny if it's an
Ooh.
automatic. They
Yeah.
cause all kinds of damage, because they don't give a damn. They're just stealing your wheels.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you need some level of security to make this not your situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Now you mentioned something earlier, and I just want to go back to it if it's okay. You mentioned how you've had to modify sockets to
Hmm.
fit to fit inside the wheel, but around the lug nut
Sure.
in general. And when it comes to wheel locks in general, you do have options. You know, you have the key, whatever it may look, whatever shape that it
And it,
is.
yeah.
Either it'll surround and go from the outside of a lug nut, similar to what
Mhm.
a socket does, or
Sure.
you have the ones that are like an Allen bit, where you actually go into
It'll
the
slide in and
center.
it'll have a key
Yeah,
that's kind of made into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in my experience, though, I've had I've had a set of each in the past. The the wheel the lug nuts and the wheel locks that have like the innie, like
Hmm.
the key
Yeah.
that goes on the inside.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
either an innie or an outie, the way I
Yeah.
look at it. Uh, you have a lot more. You're more prone to scratching, and I had so much
Oh yeah.
rust. How many times have you seen really nice lug nuts, but you have this over amount of rust developing on the inside?
Oh, absolutely.
It
Yeah.
just it scratches and yeah,
It's one of those things like, and that's the other thing with like aluminum and some of these other materials that lug nuts are really prone to just flaking and destruction because it's a softer metal, which means it'll impregnate, the paint will split, and then next thing you know, you got these lug nuts that you've used for 5 times off and ons, and they're just throwaways. You got to trash them. But if you get something that's just like polished or maybe not so bad. If you go with the anodized stuff, it can be a little.
mhm,
It'll take a little more abuse because
yeah,
it's a little more etched into the metal. But if it's
yeah,
something that's an actual coated lug nut, you're
yeah,
probably going to get flaking. It's probably going to go off. You want something that's more plated
yeah,
or etched in a way.
yeah.
I usually recommend an anodization or something that has a really strong, good, solid plate on
Yeah.
it, like a zinc plate or something.
For
So.
for me personally, man, I don't really, and I don't have any personal experience to back this up.
Mhm.
But when I think of materials in general, I can think of three materials, and you've mentioned them already: steel, which is, of course, your probably most common. You have aluminum, and then you have titanium. And
Yeah.
titanium is probably the most expensive of the options. Ho-
So. Yeah.
However, when it comes to aluminum, just based on its properties, we know it's weaker than steel.
Correct.
I don't trust it, man. When you've got,
So
yeah,
that's the issue that comes. So let's talk a little bit about aluminum. It's a great segue for to keep continuing on with street and finishing up with that. So
yeah,
let's talk about aluminum. So aluminum is good. The problem with aluminum is its tensile strength is usually a lot less than steel,
okay,
for good reason. So what is the benefit of going to aluminum? At a street capacity. It's you're
yeah,
doing it primarily for the weight savings, and we're talking about grams at this point because steel lug nuts
now, yeah,
are as a whole you're probably going to be saving on average of about a pound or two. We're talking the whole vehicle, right?
yeah,
Um, versus aluminum. Titanium as a whole is a very lighter material, but it's not for the average street guy. So again, you're going to aluminum lug nuts. Now with aluminum lug nuts, you you can put them up to a pretty good amount of torque strength. Now, me personally, I set all my torques. I torque every lug nut down to about 90 foot-pounds,
okay,
and I use anti-seize on all my threads. That's just how I've always done it, and it keeps my lug nuts from fraying and getting that nice pigtail around the threads. Because what you want to do is when you're checking your tires, you're doing brakes, and you have aluminum lug nuts, don't be afraid or don't forget to look down the barrel of that lug nut if it's a
yeah,
closed one, because chances are if it's frayed up or anything, you're not going to get the same tensile strength from that lug nut.
yeah,
It's got a limited lifespan, especially if
yes,
it's aluminum. And
yeah,
then if you start seeing the curl around the threads, you might as well not have that lug nut because you probably got
yes,
maybe about 30 foot-pounds, which isn't a lot.
yes,
You start putting in torsional rotation in there, and it's going to walk out on you, and the lug nut's going to go. And hopefully, it'll just kind of vacate the vehicle and not cause damage. But you could
mm.
have it where it flicks off, and I've seen them hit windshields. I've seen them hit sides of cars. But go ahead.
There's two things you mentioned too. One that you mentioned, the weight savings.
Mhm.
Now, one thing. similar is that when you're on a wheel, the wheel is spinning, so now you have rotational mass.
So we're
So
going to
when you
talk about
say
reciprocating mass in just
reciprocating mass,
yeah.
okay, I'll stall on that one. But the other thing you
Yes,
mentioned
all
was, um, you mentioned Loctite. Now, and I've
anti-seize.
anti-seize. When
Yeah,
you have
you don't want to put Loctite on lug
not like
nuts.
did I say Loctite? My mistake. I meant anti-seize. Um, Now, when it comes to torque specs, and I don't know, I don't really have the answer for you, but I'd have to look into it. When you use a let's just call it a substance
Mhm.
on a nut and stud, no matter what it is, typically the torque value from which you're trying to accomplish changes because of the, maybe you might say, the viscosity that's happening in between the threads and lug
Correct.
nut. That's one thing, so definitely want to keep in mind for that. The other thing is,
Heat cycle.
sometimes when it comes to threads, how you said how threads, you see how threads start to, especially with aluminum, they start to degrade or strip on the nut. Sometimes, most lug nuts, I believe, are a coarse thread.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, fine threads have its own benefits as well. So
True.
that's another factor. I mean, yeah,
That's the other thing too. People think that all threads are created equal versus, like you might have a thread like this versus a tighter thread or maybe a different groove. And we're talking at a very minute level, but believe it or not, you take that same action and move it out and move it in and move it out. And if it's not a direct, perfect fit, you're not getting the tensile strength that you want on
well,
it. And what happens is you're gonna the stronger metal is going to come out on top. So if you've got aluminum
yeah,
there on top of steel and the
yeah,
grooves there, guess what? That
yeah.
aluminum is going to
Well,
fray, and then you got a lug nut walking off on you, or you go to tighten it and it
yeah.
walks through. You can't put your torque into it,
I
or
yeah.
or you go to discount tire and the 19-year-old kid who just hit his vape pen
Got
decides
the
to hit your lug nut with
impact.
240 foot-pounds of torque, and it just and it spins out, and he's like, oh, my
It's
bad,
trash
and he
now.
just puts it on for 20
Yeah,
foot-pounds to get you out the door. But guess what? Now
yeah,
you've got a safety concern going on your vehicle, which is
yeah,
even worse than getting your wheels stolen, because now you're talking about substantial damage. If
yeah.
you've got a wheel that
Well,
walks off on
well, and you mentioned though too, when it comes to coarse versus fine threads,
you. Mhm.
I mean, even when you go aftermarket on a thread, like ARP studs or whatever the case may be,
Yep.
typically that thread, the pitch of those threads are most likely going to resemble or match what the stock spec is.
Yep.
And how you mentioned, don't if those threads on your lug nut don't match the stud, don't force it. That's asking for a lot of trouble, and just go out and actually find the proper
Yeah.
lug nut that matches the pitch or the specifications of that lug
Very
nut.
true. So let's talk a little bit about, now that we've kind of moved on from steel, aluminum. Again, my preferable one is steel for most street
Most
applications. Everything that I
for
do,
street.
I like to, for hill country running, autocross,
Yeah.
steel is going to be fine. Just get
Yes.
yourself a nice, good, open faced lug nut. It's just how I don't really like a cap lug nut. I like an open face, and I just use anti-seize on it. It
Yeah.
keeps my moisture out. And then I frequently change and rotate my tires about every 3 months anyway.
Hmm.
So I'm really not going to have a situation where rust builds up or it's anything like that. If you're using anti-seize, you're probably not going to have that kind of concern. Just coat that lug nut every once in a while, every other brake change, or every other tire takeoff. You'll probably be okay. But
Hmm.
again, use the steel. That's my recommendation, and then you kind of go from there. But again, let's talk a little bit about, um, now, for the all-in guy, the every little bit counts kind of guy,
Okay.
because I was that guy for a really long time.
Yeah.
So lightweight lug nuts are, for a long time, I thought they were like the bee's knees. I was like, oh, cool. I was thinking reciprocating mass, and that's what I really had the big argument about it. But it turns out, after having a lot of conversations, doing a lot of research over the last days, it turns out that it may not be as beneficial as I thought it was. For an application at a high racing level, sure, why not? But if you're kind of getting into the basic level of racing, the benefits that you're probably going to see are not that much, because I found out that with reciprocating mass, it's the fact that all these lug nuts are in close proximity
Yeah.
that the reciprocating mass gift or the benefit is not as much as you would think. It's not as quantifiable as
Mm.
you were thinking. Plus, the RPM levels are not as much.
Yeah.
The rotation
It's
is
true.
not as much to give you the benefit that you would say see in something that's internal inside of an engine, like a crank pulley, or say like a lightweight flywheel, or say a drive shaft. When it
Okay.
comes to the external part of a vehicle that's moving at a much bigger rate and it's
Yeah.
all tied together, the
Yes.
benefits are not in that factor of what, three or four on average multipliers. It's actually just barely doubling.
That brings up a good point. Like you said, yes, the weight savings in general.
Mhm.
You know, again, how you made a good point. You said that the with reciprocating mass, something that may weigh 1 pound once it's spinning, and depending on how far it is from the axis, has a range of 3 to 4 times the weight that it's giving. But it brings a good point though, is that if you're doing lug nuts, it would be very, very wise of you to also be doing the same with either the wheel, a lightweight wheel, and or lightweight rotors, because wheels and rotors are going to have lightweight wheels and rotors are going to have a much larger impact as opposed to lug nut, because the difference in weight and weight savings is much greater as well.
Yeah, I mean, things with tires, I mean, when you go to bigger wheels, you have to take into the account that vehicle, that your brakes not only have to stop your vehicle, but they also have to stop it with a larger dimension now. So if you originally had a stock brake system that's set up for a 16-inch wheel, and now you've gone to a 20, it now has to stop that big gigantic wheel in the
Yeah.
rotation, and that's where that kind of comes into play.
Yeah.
So
Ooh.
lighter I'm a big proponent of lighter rotors and all the time. But when it comes these days, I'm all about the bigger bang for the buck, and lug
Value.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the value. I would say lug nuts, racing lug nuts, and all those type of things
Yeah.
just aren't what we had thought they were for the longest time.
And it would be a shame. I mean, again, I keep on thinking to myself right now of somebody out there in the world who has the top of the line lightweight lug nuts,
Mhm.
but is also running around with a set of Steelies. It's like it's not the net benefit
Yeah.
is your
Yeah,
priorities are wrong. I would
and
say.
then they change these out too. I mean, you have to understand everything on a race car is a lot more consumable, if you will. So racing lug nuts are probably, for that just race. They don't want to risk that. So, I should add as well, like, while these lug nuts are generally strong enough, not all though, for day-to-day use. They are far more fragile than like a standard wheel, like a standard steel lug nut. The threads strip again far easier than steel,
Yeah.
since anytime you fasten a softer metal to a harder metal, like we were talking about earlier, you'll
Yes.
have issues with stripping. You tighten them down once or twice, and then they'll no longer look good. They'll typically scar. Anodized, painted, doesn't matter. And the next time, they'll begin to kind of look like crap. Anodized, I feel like
Yeah.
they hold up a little bit better, but again, any type of a coating on it, you're going to have a problem. Finally, add in the fact that you should never use an air tool with these type of lightweight lug nuts. So you kind of have to control
Yes.
that, which means you are solely going to be the guy taking this stuff on and off. And I think we've pretty much put the final nail in the coffin for these kind of guys. While you may not use them someday, someone may by accident, and they'll very likely damage your wheels and your setup.
Mhm.
So you're far better off spending, say, your $150 or $200, and if not $300, on something that's a little more beneficial for to you, saying lighter this or that, or something else that actually gives you reciprocating mass, or cutting out some weight in that car, or finding an
Yep.
alternative method, or even thinking about corner weighting. I feel like
Yeah.
you get a lot more benefit from something like that. So
I've got two things to add just before we wrap up here, too, Miles.
sure, sure.
One is when it comes to aftermarket lug nuts, again, how you mentioned there are a variety of colors and styles, and that
Yeah,
can be a very much a large deciding factor of what lug nuts you buy. I
sure.
would definitely lobby to buy from a reputable brand of lug nuts.
Yep.
There are way too many fly-by-night companies that will use not only. I mean, again, aluminum's fine, but you got to understand, no matter what material it is, there are different grades of that specific material. So when it comes to aluminum, there is a specific grade of aluminum. When it comes to steel, there's particular grades, and stainless steel and all that. Just because someone says aluminum, you need to go a little bit deeper and understand what material they're using. Because if you do cheap out, again, you kind of get what you pay for, and then the odds of something being catastrophic, you're on the freeway taking a turn, that you don't want that to happen to anybody. So I would definitely uh, lobby to buy from a reputable brand. Uh, uh, the eBay route may not. In other words, the fly by night company through eBay on lug nuts is probably not the way you want to go. Um,
Yeah, I mean, definitely stay away from that. I mean, you can get the titanium stuff and you can get all that stuff, but
Titanium's
personally,
great. Yeah.
but it's just it comes with a pretty substantial cost. And at the end of the day, we're talking about lug nuts, right? So, let's go that route. I mean, I know we're nerding out on something that's completely kind of
That's what we're
silly,
here
but
for. This is what it is, man.
but
Yeah.
me personally, I would rather say just go with a nice set of like forged steel
Yeah.
extended opens. That's what I love, and I think it works out for me. A forged steel,
Yeah.
it's probably the strongest lug nut type that you can get, and
Yeah.
they're relatively cost effective. I mean, right now you can check out the markets; they're about anywhere from 60 to about $80. Whereas this other titanium stuff can get pretty crazy. I mean, you can even go like All Star Dorman open lug nuts. Those kind of guys. They're like five to $10 a lug nut if you really want to go that route. But me personally, I'd rather go with like an open wheel face, something that I can kind of hand to, and especially if you've got deep socket holes in the rims, it just gives you a nice little something you can grip on and throw them on in 2 seconds. That way you can get the everything back on, and then
Yeah.
at the end of the day, pick yourself up like a good wheel, a good like torque wrench, and dedicate that torque wrench solely to your wheels. Autocross guys, track cars guys have been using that for years. I actually take mine and then I wrap a little bit of tape around it, so I know that specific torque wrench, I'm not going to use it on anything else. And I'll take it to a track day, or I know that it's going to be that, and then I'll probably keep it around for a year or two, and then I'll
Yeah.
just kind of toss it because I don't. It's either get it recalibrated or
Yeah.
go from there. But
Well,
uh,
yeah.
sad to say, like a good Harbor Freight. I hate to say it's Harbor Freight, but for this particular piece, like an old Craftsman that is in calibration,
Yeah.
or an old like Harbor Freight is kind of perfect for that tool. If you happen to get stolen at an autocross event, or it
Yeah.
gets, you leave it, somebody's cleaning your car and they decided to steal your car torque wrench, you're
Yeah.
not out, 200-300 bucks. You're only out like $30-$40
Yeah.
max.
True.
I
True.
think you can get a torque wrench Harbor Freight like $25. But just my
Yeah.
2 cents again. Hub centric rings
Yeah.
is my last little thing.
Oh. Okay.
So if you don't know what hub centric rings are, take a little bit of time, get educated on them. They make plastic inserts, or they make aluminum inserts. Most vehicles nowadays and rims, if you have anything of quality, has hub centric stuff kind of built into it, or you just need to apply a ring. Like Mike and myself both drive old 300ZXs, great
Hmm.
cars, but at the time people weren't really thinking about that. So you can buy a hub centric ring. It's a little spacer ring that fits around your
The
rotor.
gap. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
fills in the gap between the rotor and the wheel, and it makes that contact almost perfectly flush.
Yeah.
Another thing too is if you get a chance, take a little of old school grease, like just bearing grease, just not a crazy amount to pack it, just enough on it to like leave a little film, and just
Yeah.
put it around the ring, because the fit is going to be so tight that later on when you're trying to get it off, you don't want to
Mm.
fight with it. So you just
Yeah.
want it to kind of fit on pretty nice.
Yeah.
Put that anti-seize on your lug nuts, on your threads, on
Yeah.
your studs, and then put that wheel on, torque it down. You have got everything that you would want
Yeah.
in that application right there. And then, of course, again, if you can find a set of like good security lug nuts,
Yeah.
that's how I would roll. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So.
I agree. You did mention one thing I think was overlooked too, was the how you said to torque it. For those, I would definitely recommend looking at the factory service manual to understand what the dedicated specification is for torque.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's between 80 and 90 foot-pounds from what I've experienced,
Correct.
specifically within the Z world. I think 90 is a little on the high side, but I mean,
Every cars can be a little
I,
different.
I
I
typically,
do 90, but
yeah.
I like to go sometimes a little crazy.
I
But
do 80 or
80,
85 myself. I do 85 actually. Yeah.
agree to disagree. So, but
Last
again,
thing,
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry, man. I got one thing for you, and this is actually a personal story. It happened to me. It was one of those. Is it past? Is it late enough yet? It
yeah,
was
go
one
for
of
it.
those oh shit moments. I'm gonna go ahead and just say it.
All
This is the
right.
late night version of the show, right? Uh, the um, so I bought a set of lug nuts,
Mhm.
and one thing we haven't spoken about yet in this conversation is the seat, the style of the lug nut seat,
Yeah,
the mating contact, the surface
flat versus
contact. You have a
yeah,
mag, which is
con-
typically a flat, and then you have an acorn, which is rounded.
yeah.
I made a very dangerous mistake where I used a acorn mating surface
Hmm.
shape on a mag, which is typically a flat surface.
Correct.
Luckily, uh, I discovered it. Someone actually was very nice and discovered it for me, called me out, and recommended that I get this thing fixed as soon as possible. I did, didn't have any problems. But when you think about it, I wish I could have a drawing I could show you. But when
Yeah.
you have something, you'll actually damage the wheel because you have, like you said, that 80 pounds or 90 pounds of torque. Instead of having a proper mating surface that's nice and even and distributed in pressure,
Mhm.
now you're actually forcing a very, very small contact patch of one material into another, and you can actually essentially wear in a an acorn shape into one of your lug
Well, then what
holes.
happens when you go to put on the right wheel? Like, say, for instance, you find the
Yes.
situation later. Now you've got a groove in a mating surface, and now
Yes.
you don't have proper contact. So yeah,
Yes.
it's
That's
a
a
deal.
huge one, man.
That's a,
I've
I,
had
I
personal
totally forgot
contact with
about
that
that.
one.
You know, yeah,
Yeah.
we're learning out. We're
This is
nerding out on
good. This is
nuts,
good,
but
man.
it is what it is. So Ion chimed in here. He goes, handy to keep a set of acorns around if you have a usable OEM spare. He is completely 100% right. And that's another thing, too, that Ion brought up. With spare tires, like sometimes you have to take into consideration what that
Ooh,
mating surface is all around when you're going from your aftermarket wheels to the spare tire, because at the end of the day, it all needs to kind of work together in kind of
that's
unison,
true.
so something to take into
Wow.
consideration. Or
That's
keep
a
an extra set of lug nuts for just that spare tire. So just
just throw it into a Ziploc baggie right next to the lug. Yeah.
it's funny that like people there's literally an extra toolbox out of one of my many toolboxes that I have, and you open a drawer and it literally is just baggies and baggies of lug nuts, and they're like, "Why the hell do you have so many damn lug nuts?" It's like, well, people show up here and they want me to change out their setups. So on their lug nuts, they're just like, oh, just chunk them for me. But the reality is, stock lug nuts do have an inherent value to them at some capacity. And they're great when you need to kind of go on a trip or you need spares. And I keep that stuff around because it's one of those, it's not a hoarder. I promise it's not a hoarder situation. I don't keep that many around. But when
Sure.
somebody needs something, like
Keep talking,
again,
pal. Yeah.
but when it comes to that, I mean, it's one of those things. Like I wish I hadn't have thrown that away, And in my earlier days, I probably thrown away half a barrel full of those things. But nowadays, like I keep a substantial amount, of stuff. So that way, if I need them or in a quick fix or somebody shows up and I'm like, dude, you got the wrong set up. Let me at least give you a good set. And then from there, make your own definitive decision about where you want to go from here as far as the next purchase. And again, we're talking about lug nuts. It sounds dumb,
Who
but,
knew?
but it's
It's
the only
been
thing that keeps
yeah.
that wheel on from you making contact with the concrete. So it's pretty damn
Yeah.
important.
It's
So
damn important. Again, and then the repercussions of a poorly made decision, as simple as lug nuts, can be very, very expensive. Just like the picture behind you,
yeah.
it goes down to
I,
brakes,
I mean, I've
aero.
seen
Yeah.
people not pick the right lug nuts and then they end up snapping off studs and then the wheel
Yeah.
walks away. It's dangerous. I mean, we took this again because we care. We want to make sure you're making the proper decisions for your car. Want to make sure you're keeping your car nice and safe. Ion had one more chime, and he said another
Mhm.
thing to consider is note we what the torque spec is for an aftermarket lug nut stud. Especially like ARP based, and he's
S-
100%
s-
accurate as
s-
well. The torque rating usually is raised with the aftermarket stuff,
So you would say that if
or
you are
sometimes lowered.
doing,
He's right. It's
yeah.
both. Yeah.
So when it comes to aftermarket, if you had to choose between a factory specification and a aftermarket specification, follow the aftermarket
Mm.
of
Yeah,
the
definitely,
lug.
because it's their
Yeah,
product that you're going
it's
with,
their
not
product.
it's not the OEM. At that point,
Yeah.
you've put your faith in their product, so you need to follow their product rules. ARP is they've been doing this game forever. When it comes to lug
Mhm.
nuts and stud options, they make a very good stud replacement kit, usually an extended. And then Nismo has been doing it too as well.
Mm,
They usually make a lot of options, especially for like guys with like S14s, Z32s, 350Zs. They've been doing it for a really long time. You have other really great manufacturers or really vendors. I think even Z1 does their own variations of it too as well,
they do.
but they've tried their stuff, they test and tune their stuff, so they know what they're doing, and when they make recommendations, and they know that their stuff takes tensile strength. So again, getting back to it, just know those type of things for your own safety, and then of course for your own security. So at the end of the day, daily driving, you probably want to find yourself a good open wheel steel lug nut, that's not going to give you problems and look good at the end of the day. But
Hmm.
or you can go to the factory ones like that. We love those.
Yeah.
And then just kind of do your own research and rarity, scarcity, and rarity is your friend there. You want to definitely make sure that you're not with following the crowd and going with the gorilla stuff, because guess what? Everybody has those
Yeah.
those key locks. I
Everybody
have
and their
about
mom's got them.
I
Yeah.
have about 25 gorilla lug nut keys. Literally, I
Yeah.
swear to God, I have 25 of them in my toolbox. I give them
Woo.
away now because everybody shows up and they have they change out lug nuts, and I swear I have that key more often than not. So
That's
again,
good.
I'm not saying it's not a good product. It's just that it's the issue that everybody and their mother has it. You want to
Yep.
go with rarity, so when they go to try to steal your stuff, oh damn, he's got something different. Move on to the next car. So
Yep.
just my
Yep.
2 cents. And then if you're going
Good.
big boy, do
Yeah.
your research, know your
Again,
products, know what you're looking for.
it's again when you're buying a $2,000 or more pair of wheels, yeah, and you're using $20 locks, that everybody has. That's
Yeah.
it's not a wise decision. You got to kind of match the investment
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
not
So
always about
yeah.
the dollars you spend, but it's all about
Yes.
buying the good quality stuff
And
at that point. And it doesn't, like I said, don't consider lightweight being what you need. You're not going to probably see the benefits of it. Go moreover with something that's going to give you that nice tensile strength to keep that wheel on and let you put down that applied torque time and time again, versus an aluminum one that's going to give you two, three, four times. Titanium, five, six, seven, and that's it.
yep.
Or discount tire one, and then you're done. So that's all
Done.
we're going to talk about here
Yeah.
for nuts for the night. But thank you for
Yeah.
staying with us. And yes,
Yes.
we do nerd out like this on
This is good.
normally. This is what we do. We normally nerd out about stuff like this.
I
Sad to say, but I hope you learned a little bit.
I
So
want to say we probably did that. Would you call it well over 20 minutes for sure? On like
we can
I want to
rant.
say we
We
can
can
do it.
rant. We can rant for sure.
This
So
is yeah,
that's
but
yeah.
this is why we do it, man. Because again, if it wasn't here, we'd be in a parking lot doing it right
True.
at the same
We'd be
moment.
giving some new, some green noob,
Yes.
some advice.
Yeah.
Sadly.
We
But moving on.
yeah.
So
Yes.
let's
Yes.
talk
Yes.
about
Let's. Well,
groups
before
of
we do,
people. Oh, go ahead.
uh, sorry, man. Before we do, I did want to go ahead and it's been a minute since we did some crowd work here too. Want to go ahead
Sure.
and give a few more here. Kind of going back just a little bit here. We did have some other comments in reference to the GT4 comments we made during our motorsports update. We did have Myers Motorsports saying, of course, huge field, a lot of competition happening for the Nissan teams on the uh, GT series, GT4 series. Actually, Coda GT4 is coming to Coda. If you are in the Texas area, it'll be at uh, oh shoot, less than a month away.
Hmm.
So
Correct.
I know between now and then we will have another episode, and we will be definitely promoting that race and also the car corral, which is also set to happen, I believe, very very soon. Details are to be announced at that point. And last one, I think Ion had one more, which was saying, clean your studs, mounting, dismounting wheels. Don't need to goober up your threads.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
with
very.
aluminum stuff, you get all that stuff on it, then you just have a big old mess on your hand, and then you're pulling studs, which sucks. If you can,
That can suck.
it
Yes.
can
That
suck.
we could spend
So
another 30 minutes on pulling studs.
I'm
We
not
could
going to
talk
talk
about
about studs and
that.
how much they suck. We'll leave it alone. So, but
Yes.
moving on with our lives. So let's talk a little bit about groups of people getting together, more nerds getting together. We'll talk a little bit about events and round out our night. So this segment of
Yes.
the Nissan Nerd Podcast is meant to promote regional and national Nissan related events happening where you live. If you're an organizer or spectator, we're happy to influence the success of an event. All you got to do is reach out to us. Now, Mike, you want to talk about this next upcoming episode, next upcoming event, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So for this segment, we've got one event in particular we want to go ahead and promote. It's actually an event we haven't yet promoted. So we want to talk about an event that's been happening for, oh, what would you call it? Well over 15 years. Dare I
Long
say
time.
close to 20? Yeah, yeah. Of course, we are talking about Z Days, an event actually happening out in North Carolina. I'm going to share my screen on this. Um, the 2023 Z Days event is happening May 17th through the 21st. So we're just under a month away from this event. More specifically, it's happening in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. So if you are on the East Coast, close to North Carolina, I think it's definitely worth your while to look into this event, make some time, maybe book a hotel for all of the event or some of the event. Honestly, there is so much happening during Z Days this year that uh, there really isn't a. I really can't imagine you having a bad time. Myself, Miles, you and myself have each gone to Z Days in the past at different parts, at different times in the last 10 years.
Correct.
Um,
I've had a
we've
blast there.
Oh, dude,
Probably too much of a good time.
some of the best times, best memories. I have so many memories of Z Days, man. So you're absolutely right. And we have had one of its organizers, Brian Settle, with us on in the past to talk a lot about those because he's a very personable guy. I mean, I treat him like a brother, man. Again, for as much stories and memories we have with him. Great, great guy, and he definitely knows how to put on a show. Him and his team here with Z Days. But getting into this year's event, we've got 5 days of action. Some of the events that you can expect to happen. We've actually got a karaoke night. We've got a game night. There is a 5K run that is organized during this event, and that's actually pretty unique to car events actually having a 5K, and they've been doing it for a few years in the past already. So it's very, very much, I think, in my opinion, a unique signature of Z Days that's doing the 5K.
Mhm.
Something they're bringing back, at least in my opinion, is the casino night as well. I've always wanted to do a casino night. I won't lie to you, man. I would. That sounds like so much fun.
You know, it'd
Uh,
be a charity event, and then all of a sudden you're like, you lost your clothes. It's like, how did you lose your house at
yeah,
a charity gambling night? They're like, sir, please
y-
just stop. Let
is
it
there?
ride.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this,
We were playing with Monopoly money. Now you've got actual
you got
money.
real money on the table. It's like, come
Yeah,
on, man.
yeah. One
But
of the
no.
cool events that they have is a trike autocross where they get these tricycles and they're having an autocross like track and competition. Like that's a lot of freaking fun, man.
Yep.
I ain't gonna lie. Z Days is partnering with a lot of local businesses in the area, and they will be involved with some of the daily activities. We've got a judge car show, a group photo. You have your traditional dinner and awards ceremony. Typically after the judge car show, you might say your closing ceremony of sorts. Online registration is open. It's still open. Zdays.com. That's days with a Z. Zdays.com. You can check out again to get more information about this event, the registration. You can get information on the hotel for which you can register. And again, I can't say much. I can't say enough about this event. And again, for those who are in the area, highly recommend that you guys go out and have some fun and hang out with the guys. Do it for us if you are in that area. So that is events for me, Miles. That wraps up events.
That wraps up event. Actually, I think that's going to wrap up the night. I think we're done. So again, many events have been promoted for the first of the year. We only have so much time, so we'll continue to promote the events as we get closer to them. Feel free to let us know if there's again happening something in your neck of the woods that we need to know or we need to promote. We are happy to do it. You just got to give us a little bit of time and keep us in the loop by letting us know what's happening. Again, you can continue to let us know what's happening in your neck of the woods by reaching out to us or just continuing to follow us and keep us updated. But always remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can contact us through social media. Facebook page is probably the most updated. And of course, we have an Instagram page as well. If you
Yes,
need to contact with us with your information, you can do that at info@nissannerd.com. Let's do some last crowd work. Say bye to everybody, and then I think that's it, man. So for the
that
night.
sounds good. That sounds good.
Uh, Anybody we
Again,
need to say bye to? Anybody else on with us still here for the night? I know it's 2 hours. It's a long time, but guess
we
what? It's you didn't have to leave your house to talk about cars, so it's not that bad.
how cool
All
is that?
right.
Again, and we were talking about this offline, Miles. You know, we always imagined as we were doing this show that for those who are listening, that maybe they do it as they're in the garage. It's a Thursday night. You know, I might call it Friday Junior. It's the night before the party night. You know, and maybe you spend some time in the garage. You're turning a wrench. Maybe you have us in the background. You're having a good time, and you just got some company, just talking Nissans, man. So
That's what I always tell people. So we're background noise. You know what I mean? We're
yeah,
That's all we are. We are car guy background noise. So run our old episodes in the background while you're in the
yeah,
garage.
you're not
Hopefully
alone.
some of this, yeah, you're not alone. Hopefully some of this kind of gets through your ear. Maybe from time to time we help you, which is weird, in some capacity with something, or maybe we gave you some good guidance, or
Maybe
at the
there's a
very
guy doing lug nuts. Maybe
maybe
there's
there's
a
a
guy
guy
doing
doing lug
lug
nuts. And
nuts
he's like,
right now.
get these
Oh,
out of here, this crap
yeah,
out of
get
here.
this trash out of here. Yeah.
But again, that's what we're here for. We're always happy to help the community. Again, let us know what's happening in your neck of the woods. Till then, we'll see you on the next episode of the Nissan Nerd Podcast. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody for
Yeah.
being on with us here tonight.
Thank you.
And until then, I always say get in your garage, make something cool. I like you better when you're in your garage. So
All
um,
right. Yes. Let's round up this episode. For those who are with us, go ahead. Whatever you have in front of us, let's do a salute again. Round off. Kanpai, everybody.
kanpai.
Again, do a clink. Ah, clink. Mm.
Ooh, good stuff.
Let's do this.